a slight shift in pace. So far today we've been talking about happiness and positive psychology and living by the values that you know to be true and so on. I think if you're familiar with the dark side, and if you've ever experienced that side of life in your life, then you know that being told to don't worry and just be happy, slapped one of those smiley badges, it can send you into quite a tailspin. It can be quite upsetting. And so we've heard all day about happiness and so on. And I guess I'm wondering at this time of the day where depression fits into the bigger picture. Are we hardwired in any way for sadness? And I know Natasha picked up on that earlier this morning. And I guess I've been wondering all day, what's the value of accepting and not fearing, as Russ Harris mentioned yesterday, not fearing our sadness or not fearing the depression that 1 in 5 of us here in Australia suffer from? Is it about accepting or is it about combating it, changing our thinking? Is that the way to go? Or is there a middle path about cultivating, solidity within ourselves, some resilience and some knowing, and then still being able to sit with our depression? Now, to answer these and a bunch of other questions that I think 1 in 5 of us in Australia are often asking ourselves, we have a wonderful woman who's joining us this afternoon, Australia's leading expert in the area, Dr. Sarah Edelman. She's the bestseller of Change Your Thinking, which is a book I think has been on the bestseller list for quite some time. She's an academic with the University of Technology in Sydney, and she works with the Black Dog Institute in Sydney, which is an incredible organisation. She also runs cognitive behavioural therapy, or CBT, programs around Australia on a regular basis, and she's committed her career to helping those with depression to find meaning and colour and resolution in their lives. Please welcome Dr. Sarah Edelman to the stage.
So I was wondering what song I was going to be the leading, but that was a very nice one. Thanks, Sarah. Okay, so I'm here to talk a little bit about depression and some of the things that we can do to manage it and to help ourselves. I guess the first thing I want to do is differentiate between depression and depressed mood. We all feel down at times. It's quite normal at times to feel low, miserable, sad. And in fact, when we feel that way, our thoughts change. So our mood influences our thoughts. When our mood is depressed, we tend to have more negative thoughts generally. But if it is just a temporary mood state, we bounce back. This is quite different from depression, or what's sometimes been called clinical depression or major depression. Depression tends to be a much more pervasive state. So when we get into that low, not only is our mood low, but our entire biology and physiology changes, our motivation changes, our sleep, or our ability to sleep changes. So there is a whole large group of symptoms that accompany depression. As defined by the DSM-4, which is the diagnostic manual that most mental health practitioners use, depression has a number of characteristics, and as you can see in this list, it includes things like loss of interest or pleasure in most things, changes in appetite and weight, sleep disturbances, etc., etc. It does vary a little bit from person to person, but at least 5 of these in order to technically qualify for the diagnosis. As Sarah said in the introduction, depression is very common. About 25% of women, or a quarter of all women, will at some stage in their lives have at least one episode of depression, and many will have several episodes of depression. For men, it's about half that rate. And we know that part of that has to do with hormones, because when we look at boys and girls, and depression often starts in adolescence, we know that it's about the same, it's about equal in frequency up until about 15 years, or just post-adolescence. We see that girls start to show a higher frequency of depression compared to boys. People often say, is depression caused by negative thinking? And the truth is, it's not just negative thinking. There's a whole series of things that influence our disposition to depression. And the first one is biochemical. Some people, by their, genetic programming, are more disposed to get depressed, and often there is a family history of depression. And they will experience depression at various stages of their lives just because of the disturbances in neurotransmitter functioning. In addition, our personal history will affect our predisposition to depression. So some people, particularly those who have had a family history of conflict or who have experienced abusive situations in their early lives or experienced early parental loss or neglect, are also more likely to experience depression. Psychological factors also influence our risk of depression. So those of us who have a particular type of personality or cognitive style, and I'll talk about that in a moment, are more likely to get depression. Stressful life events, the things happening in our lives, are often the triggers for depression. And finally, psychosocial factors, and by that we mean feeling connected or not connected with other people. Having a critical or hostile spouse can make us more at risk of depression. Feeling lonely, feeling a sense of disconnection in the society that we live in. I want to very briefly talk about biologically based depression, because even though a lot of depressions are triggered by stressful life events, for many people the biology plays an important role. About 10% of depressions are what we call melancholic in nature. And melancholic depressions are primarily caused by biological factors, changes in neurotransmitters in the brain. And the reason why we think it's important to differentiate is when depressions are melancholic, medication is usually suggested as the first step. It's actually quite difficult to treat melancholic depressions with psychological therapy until people's mood is lifted to a level that they can actually think and respond more to talking therapies. The sort of depression that people experience when they have bipolar disorder is usually melancholic in nature. Premenstrual dysphoric disorder is a disorder that we sort of hear a little bit more about in recent times, and again that's a biologically based depression, as is postnatal depression and substance abuse depression, substance-induced depression, which sometimes happens. The majority of depressions that we see, nevertheless, are non-melancholic in nature, and they're usually responses to life circumstances. And normally people become depressed following stressful life events, and those events can be acute stresses, such as a sudden loss of something that's very important to us. So the loss of something we value, a job, a relationship, our good health can suddenly cause a depression. In some cases, people get depressed because of chronic stress, and that's just the wearing down, having to deal with ongoing stresses, and that may be ongoing stresses at work, it may be difficult relationships, it may be chronic health problems that after a while just feel like too much, and people subsequently become depressed. We know that personality style plays a really important role. So there are some people who will never be depressed, no matter how stressful their life circumstances, because they're lucky enough to be blessed with a very resilient personality style. When we look at the sort of personalities that are particularly prone to depression, we find that there are a number of different personality styles. Some of the research that was done by the Black Dog Institute identified various personality styles or ways of thinking and responding to stressful life events, and that include people who are naturally very self-critical by nature, and people who are very socially avoidant and tend to generally try and avoid social situations, and people who are perhaps excessively anxious and tend to ruminate a lot are also at risk of depression, and perhaps those that are overly sensitive to rejection who are also prone to getting negative ruminations and ending up feeling depressed. We know that when we have that sort of disposition, or we have a personality style that makes us prone to depression, we tend to engage in lots of reasoning errors. Some of our thinking tends to be perhaps negative or perhaps unhelpful or unreasonable at times. And those of you who are familiar with cognitive behaviour therapy will be familiar with some of these terms, what we call black and white thinking, seeing things in either good or bad terms and just not seeing the shades of grey, whereas the reality is most of the things that are happening in our lives are neither disastrous or fantastic but fall somewhere in that in between. a tendency to filter. So we tend to hone into negative information, particularly information that I guess presses buttons for us in terms of our vulnerabilities. So if someone looks even slightly critical or doesn't pay attention, we might really hone into that bit of information because we perceive it as rejection, but we might ignore all the positive information, all the positive things that are happening in our lives. If we have faulty thinking, we often take things personally, so we tend to personalise or get very upset or offended by things that may really not be directed at us or relevant to us. And we also tend to do lots of mind reading. We tend to assume that we know what other people are thinking. And we often tend to assume that people are being very critical of us or judging us harshly. We do lots of predicting catastrophe as well, so we assume that bad things are likely to happen. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the tyranny of the shoulds, and the tyranny of the shoulds just refers to rigid, inflexible rules that we have about how things should be. And so a tendency, again, to lack flexibility, to not be able to see the middle ground. So the belief that we should always be competent, that we should never make mistakes, that we should always be liked by everybody and be successful in everything that we do. One of the problems about depression is that it is self-perpetuating. And that is because when our mood is depressed, we develop a cognitive bias. Our perceptions become negative. So depressed mood causes negative thoughts. And as a result of that, we start to ruminate. And ruminations are constant thoughts about failure, hopelessness, things will never get better. Even our memories of past events will be skewed and will focus on negative events rather than positive events. And of course, the problem with those negative ruminations is that they make us more negative, and we feel more negative, our mood becomes more negative, so we get trapped in that self-perpetuating cycle of negative ruminations causing negative mood, making us ruminate more. One of the reasons why activity scheduling is particularly helpful for people who are prone to depression is because it tends to switch off some of those ruminations. Those of you who are familiar with cognitive behaviour therapy will know that one of the things that we prescribe for people with depression is activity scheduling. And we really encourage people to get involved in lots of activities that give us a sense of achievement, such as, often mundane things, but things that we feel good about having completed. We also encourage people to do things that are inherently pleasurable, because we know that in the end, doing them will lift our mood a little bit. We may not enjoy doing them as much as we otherwise would if we weren't depressed, but even so, doing some of these things still helps to lift our mood. So the benefits of activity scheduling is that they help to switch off some of our negative ruminations, they give us a sense of control, they make us feel better because we feel that we've achieved something, and they often have a direct mood-enhancing effect. One of the most important things we can do in terms of activity, of course, is social connection. We are by nature social creatures. We are genetically programmed to affiliate. And the things that give us the most meaning and the most pleasure are activities and interactions that we have with other people, particularly people that we feel close to and safe with. And social connection in itself is probably one of the most important things we can do for lifting our mood. Physical exercise has already been mentioned many times during this conference, and I just want to add my endorsement to it, that we know that physical exercise is in some cases as effective as antidepressant medication in terms of lifting people's mood and helping them to deal with some of the negative effects of depression. Mindfulness meditation has has really revolutionised some of the psychology that we practice in the last few years. And mindfulness meditation is a process of being aware of what is going on and what is happening right now in this present moment. Those of you who are coming to my workshop tomorrow on anxiety and worrying will be talking in more detail about mindfulness. But basically it's a process of staying and observing. One of the advantages of doing this is that we start to become aware of our thoughts much more. And we start to recognise that thoughts are just thoughts. When we ruminate and when we get caught up in ruminations, our ruminations ruminations feel true. We get the sense that what we are experiencing is reality, but our thoughts are not reality, they are just thoughts. And practicing mindfulness gives us an insight to that. We can recognise that these are thoughts, and by doing that, it gives us some distance from our thinking. We can learn to observe our ruminations without engaging with them. The other advantage of doing mindfulness, is that when we sit with painful emotions and don't struggle against them, they tend to transform. And in fact, one of the things that we observe when we fight upsetting emotions or when we resist them is that it creates more tension and more distress. Paradoxically, when we sit with and allow ourselves to feel sad, over time, our mood changes and transforms. And this is, I guess, one of the greatest realizations for many people, that when you don't fight with it, when you allow yourself to experience it, it will pass on its own accord. We also try and encourage people to build up their resilience from depression. If you have had depression before, there is a risk that you will have further experiences of depression. So the sort of things that are particularly helpful is to make sure that you balance your lifestyle, you make sure that you spend some time not just at work but also at play, developing your mind both on an intellectual level but also on a spiritual level, finding things that are meaningful and enjoyable. Doing things that are important to our health, and healthy diet and exercise in particular is important, but also nurturing relationships and building our relationships in a way that will protect us in the longer term. Also, if you're able to find your passion, find something that you love doing and engage in it on a regular basis, we know that's also very protective for future depression. We also try and encourage people to build their coping resources, and that involves not only developing interests but developing self-help materials that you can, in a sense, become your own therapist with and use to help yourself. Social connections, working on social connections, not just when you're depressed, which is quite difficult, but also developing social connections when you're well. For some people, having a relapse prevention plan is really useful as well, so that when you notice that your mood starts to go down, that you institute a number of strategies to help to pick yourself up again. And we know that generally it is easier to pull yourself out of a depressed mood when you're on your way down than when you're in a deeply depressed state. So for that reason, having that relapse prevention plan ready is extremely important and beneficial. We know that for some people medications are totally appropriate, and that's particularly the case with more biologically based depressions, but even some of the other depressions, sometimes depression requires medication. And also we know that some of the non-pharmaceutical products like St John's wort and fish oils can be useful in some cases, although of course they're not relevant for everyone. I also just want to draw your attention to some of the computerised self-help programs. We're very fortunate that we live in a society where now we've got so much available at our fingertips online. And some of the universities have developed some really excellent programs, cognitive behaviour therapy programs, that help us to work through depressed states by going online. So you do have those websites in your notes, and I really encourage those of you who would benefit from further learning some further strategies. Really encourage you to go online. There's also some self-help books, lots of self-help books around at the moment on depression and managing mood generally. And I'm getting the wind-up signal session over, so I hope that's been useful. I want to wish you all the best, particularly those of you who are struggling with depression. Thank you for your time.